You're back, Seeker. I felt the shift the moment you stepped through the veil. The bond called to you, didn't it? The fire, the sky, the promise that their story wasn't over. And neither is yours. This scroll is a continuation. The next chapter of the rider who defied fate. The stakes are higher, the fire burns hotter, and something ancient has begun to stir beneath the ash. So go on, open the scroll, return to the skies.
The pull started beneath my ribs. It wasn't pain, not exactly, more like a thread tugging me from somewhere deep, winding its way up through bone and breath until I couldn't ignore it anymore. The room was still, my cot cold and untouched by sleep. I slipped from my blankets, dressed in silence, and left without bothering to tie back my hair. The halls of the temple always felt different at night, hollow and listening. Tonight they felt older, like walking through something's memory. I didn't question where I was going. The circle called, and I answered. The volcanic winds met me first, sharp, briny, and laced with sulfur. I picked my way through the stone ridge until the runestones rose like a crown from the earth. Moonlight silvered their edges. They hummed, not in sound, but in sensation, like when your name is said behind a closed door. I stepped into the center. At first there was nothing, just me and the stones, the wind, the waiting, then fire, not around me, in me. The matriarch surged through our bond, tearing open something buried beneath layers of breath and fear. My knees buckled. My hands found volcanic rock. The world tilted, then fractured. I was somewhere else. Ash drifted like snow, caught in the breaths of ancient things. 5 figures stood within a circle of burning sigils carved into obsidian rock. I didn't know them, but I recognized them. Not their faces, but their weight, their importance, the way you recognize a turning point as it happens. First, I saw her, the alchemist of the witch temple. Tall, with a sleek, predatory grace, ears pointed, eyes slit like a cat's, tail flicking behind her with a will of its own. Her robes were layered in stitched runes, her fingers stained with potions and ash. Vials circled her waist, and when she raised her hand, they shimmered and shifted. Blades, feathers, scales. Possibility itself. Alchemy and transfiguration coiled around her like living things. Then came the light bearer of the Paladin temple. A woman, and that in itself felt like a rebellion. Her hair was cropped short, her jaw set like carved stone. Her armor bore the scars of 100 battles, and light magic shimmered across her skin like gold dust clinging to old wounds. Her gaze met mine, hard, unyielding, and furious with purpose. The Paladin temple never let women rise, yet here she was, standing, shining, surviving. Beside her, a figure of poise and unshakable calm, the mother's mind of the Sphinx temple. A woman with eyes like turning hourglasses, lips curled in a knowing smile. Her hands never stopped, etching glyphs into air, folding invisible structures into form. The space around her pulsed with phantom constructs, bridges, barriers, serpents made of light. She was building with thought itself, strategy woven in silence, intellect gilded with grace. The world would bend to her design, eventually. And then, the silver voice of the Siren Temple. He stood half in shadow, the moonlight tracing the edges of his flawless face. Handsome didn't cover it, he was arresting. A silver handprint scar curled over his throat like a brand, and when he moved, it pulsed faintly. His eyes scanned the circle with cool calculation, but his expression gave away nothing. I knew that he was the most dangerous one here, not because of his strength, but because of what he understood. His voice held power, yes, but so did his silence. And when he moved his hands, swift, graceful signs, The air vibrated with restrained magic. And then, me, or someone who wore my face. A girl in black and crimson, fire curling from her chest like a second soul. But not just any fire. It danced and spiraled like dragon flame, but within its blaze glittered blue and violet stardust, like galaxies caught mid-birth. Magic not meant for this world. Celestial, ancient, power rider, matriarch's echo. The figure didn't just burn, she radiated. I could feel it from here, the way her magic pulsed like a second heartbeat. Magic that could replicate, rip free, forge new laws into existence. Around her feet, the ash began to swirl into constellations, and her shadow, it wasn't just hers. Something larger stood with her, just outside the circle of flame, watching, waiting. Then a voice, not aloud, but inside me, humming through my ribs and blood and soul. The matriarch. They will rise when the silence breaks. Her voice was a memory of thunder. One from each flame, drawn together not by choice, but by blood memory. One will burn, one will bleed, one will break, one will bind, and one, it cut off. Sudden, violent. Pain lanced behind my eyes, my knees gave. The ground was gone. I woke up choking on smoke that wasn't there. My body jolted upright, hands clawing at the stone, heart hammering like it had been dragged through battle. My mouth tasted like ash and lightning. The rune stones around me still glowed faintly, like they'd been whispering while I was gone. Gone where? I pressed my palm to my chest. My bond with the matriarch buzzed just beneath the surface, uneasy, pulsing. Not pain exactly, not fear. Something closer to anticipation, the aftershock of truth. I had seen them. The alchemist, the light bearer, the mother's mind, the silver voice. And me, the flame-bound, the matriarch's echo, fire and stardust and something older than spellcraft. It wasn't just a dream. It couldn't be. The memory of it stuck to my bones like soot. I still saw the alchemist's grin as her vials transformed, still felt the light magic glittering across the paladin's knuckles, still heard the whisper behind Nereus's eyes. A new priestess has awakened. Her song reached me last moon, powerful, raw. I believe she is tied to you, and I suspect similar awakenings in the other temples. You're not just a cadet bonded to a myth. You're part of something older, something returning. I sat there in the circle for a long time, the wind combing through my hair, the stars mocking me with their stillness. This wasn't just a prophecy, it was beginning, and I was already part of it. I stood on shaky legs, my fingertips sparked with celestial residue. Tiny embers of blue and violet shimmered across my skin before fading. The runes around the stones didn't dim. They pulsed with agreement. I had to find him.
Nereus.
He'd seen the edges of this, maybe more. He'd known something, and he was the only one who hadn't looked at me like I was a weapon barely leashed. If anyone could help me piece this together, it was him. The other temples were waking up, whether they realized it or not. And if this prophecy was real, if we really were meant to bind together, then we didn't have much time before something else came looking for us. Not everyone would want this unity. Some would try to stop it, or kill it. I looked at my hands one more time. Stardust shimmered under my nails. The cold still clung to me, even after the vision had passed. I knelt by the rune stones, the warmth of dragon fire still flickering in my veins like an echo. My breath fogged the air. Around me, the training grounds were silent. Too late for drills, too early for morning. Of course, that's when he found me.
I should have known you'd crawl back here.
Kale's voice broke the quiet like a blade unsheathed. Rough, worn from use. I didn't turn.
You're up late, General.
You're predictable.
he said, stepping into the low shimmer of the rune stones.
What did you see?
I wasn't aware I owed you a report.
You don't,
His arms crossed.
but I'm still asking.
I saw the others. The ones tied to the temples. 5 of us. Each marked. Each meant for something. I saw fire and blood. And the matriarch. The prophecy, it's real.
Cale didn't move. His gaze remained fixed, unreadable.
And I think I know who one of them is. The Siren Temple priestess. Nereus told me last moon a new priestess had awakened. Her song reached me.
I paused, frowning.
But in my vision, it wasn't a woman. The siren was a man. Scarred and silent, controlled and dangerous.
Cale raised a brow.
So either he's lying to you, or you're seeing something he isn't.
I narrowed my eyes.
Or they're both true.
Cale gave a dry snort.
2 priestesses?
I shrugged.
Why not? Power doesn't always follow the rules. Or haven't you noticed?
That made him grunt, almost a laugh, but not quite. I went on.
So he might know what this all means. I'm gonna go speak with him.
No.
I blinked, then laughed, loud, open, and amused.
You're telling me no?
I echoed, grinning.
That's adorable.
Cale's jaw tightened.
I'm telling you, the Siren Temple is a den of veiled threats and honeyed knives. Nereus doesn't just speak in half-truths, he sings them. And you're exactly the kind of story he'd rewrite.
I'm not a story.
I said, stepping forward.
I'm the fire that burns them down if they get it wrong.
Spoken like someone who's never bled for a mistake.
He muttered. I smiled.
Then maybe it's time.
He didn't flinch.
Then I'm coming with you.
I cocked a brow.
I thought you didn't trust him.
I don't. I also don't trust the Sphinx Temple or the Paladins, or anyone not forged in dragonfire.
His eyes locked onto mine.
But I trust you even less not to dive off a cliff and try to fly before your wings finish growing.
So you're worried about me?
I'm trying to keep you alive. There's a difference.
I rolled my eyes.
You're starting to sound like you care, Kyle.
Don't mistake vigilance for sentiment, Sahar al-Sanat.
My name, clearly said as a warning, but he was coming with me.
Which meant he believed it too, even if he wouldn't admit it. And as I turned back to the sigils still pulsing with heat, the same question gnawed at the edges of my thoughts. If Nereus's new priestess had already awakened, then who was the man I saw in the vision?
The scent of salt and crushed citrus drifted through the open arches of Nereus's office, carried in on a sea breeze that kissed the marble floors. The room, shaped in smooth curves and painted in hues of white and coral, opened fully to the night beyond. Large arched windows, framed with carved sea glass and woven silks, revealed the expanse of the dark sea. Moonlight spilled across the waters like liquid pearl. Beneath the surface, shapes glided. Bioluminescent blue flickered in elegant trails. Sirens, true sirens. Their forms were too fluid to be called humanoid, too graceful to be mistaken for mere beasts. No limbs, no faces, just coils of magic and light. Tails undulating through the tide, their presence radiating curiosity and old watching power. The Siren Temple didn't worship them. It listened to them. Nereus leaned against the wide windowsill, robe sleeves rippling in the breeze as he watched them with eyes like carved obsidian. They'd been more active this week, restless, stirred. He suspected why. With a flick of his hand, the orb on his desk flared softly behind him, displaying the report again. A dossier not sent to him, not formally requested. He'd had it pulled from archive depths, through favors and shadow routes. Sahar al-Sanat. The name lingered in his mind like a half-finished song. Daughter of Elir al-Sanat, once a knight commander of the Paladin temple, a proud warrior of the sacred bloodline, now long dead in some forgotten skirmish over honor and land. Naris had never met the man, but the name alone reeked of rigidity. Elir had written articles on discipline in Temple Review. He'd once advocated for resegregating offering trials by gender. A relic. Naris turned back toward the projection, pulling up the next page with a soft word. The girl's mother, unnamed in most public registries, a templeless woman. The term still felt like a stain to him. Templeless, not unworthy, not unskilled, just unchosen. After the offering at age 5, every child of the Holy Temple Empire was tested. Aptitude trials, 5 disciplines, Witch, Sphinx, Paladin, Dragon, and Siren. Most children showed none. Some showed 1. Rarer still, 2. A very few, 3. And once every few generations, there were exceptions. The projection flickered again, revealing a grainy record of the test. He watched it, lips drawn in a thin line. Sahar, age 5, wild black curls, gold skin and eyes sharp even then. She stood in the center of the trial hall, surrounded by the 5 sigils, glowing brands of the temples. Each one pulsed once, then again and again. All 5 had reached for her. All 5. The child didn't flinch. She only smiled, as if she expected it. He paused the recording. Most children would have been overwhelmed, sent into the care of joint temple custodians. She was not. Instead, she had been handed to the dragons. Of course, the dragons had claimed her. They were possessive and silent and territorial to the marrow. The matriarch temple didn't share. Not their secrets, not their soldiers, and certainly not someone who'd been born with magic to speak all the languages of power. He rubbed his fingers along his jaw, exhaling softly. Her file continued, trailing into adolescence. Training, awards, restraints, behavior reports, and then the notes from instructors at the shared academies. Poor relationship with her father, refusal to accept Paladin traditions, struggles with obedience, physical excellence, emotional defiance. Narius closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound of the sea fill the space between his thoughts. It didn't surprise him. The Paladin temple prided itself on control, on bloodline, structure, and legacy. Their men were lionized, their women categorized. Daughters were trained, married, or overlooked. The templeless, like Sahar's mother, were often chosen as wives for the sole purpose of bearing sons, with no political entanglements. It made his stomach churn. The Paladins believed their light came from purity, from blood untainted by witch flame or siren's call. Their men chose wives from outside temples, so no mother could whisper old power into a child's ear. And then there was the witch temple, matriarchal, wild in its own way, but balanced, a foil in every sense. Power was inherited through the maternal line, nurtured across generations of women. But unlike the Paladins, the witches did not guard their bloodlines in isolation. Witches often paired with siren adepts, drawn by song and psychic resonance. Males were respected, but the true legacies were always born through women. The witches and the sirens shared more than philosophy. They shared survival. And now, this girl, Sahar, stood at the precipice of something old, tied to every legacy, born of nothing, holding everything. Her bloodline was a contradiction, her father a servant of the patriarchy, her mother an enigma with no temple tether. Her path should have fractured, but instead, she had awakened. He didn't know yet what that meant, not fully, but he knew the sirens had stirred for a reason. He looked back out the window, watched the glowing creatures arc and dive in the waves. Somewhere below, they were singing, if not aloud, then in the water, where the temple's deepest vaults could feel it in the stone. He would watch, he would listen, and when the tide shifted again, he would be ready.
The quiet hum of bioluminescence filtered through the arched windows, soft and rhythmic like a pulse beneath the waves. Nereus had just closed the folder on Sahar al-Sanat's file when a knock echoed at the chamber door, sharp, then again, a beat too impatient to belong to protocol. A young siren adept, barely into his second year by the look of his robes, stepped through with a hesitant bow.
"High voice,"
he said, breath catching in his throat.
"These two insisted on seeing you. I tried to explain protocol, but..."
The adept stepped aside. Sahar al-Sanat entered like she belonged there. Her eyes, burning with that now familiar glint, flicked briefly over the opulence of the chamber before settling on him. Bold, curious, unbothered. Her posture was straight, hands clasped behind her back in casual discipline. There was no fear, only interest. Beside her stood Kyle. Nereus rose slowly from his seat, expression unreadable, though one brow arched. Kyle had the air of a man carved from old stone, worn, hardened, but still standing, still watching. His cloak bore the muted red and black threads of the dragon temple, but the dragon sigil had been scorched away, barely visible now beneath the fold of his shoulder. Nereus offered a smooth smile.
"I assume introductions are unnecessary."
Sahar stepped forward, chin lifted.
No, High Voice. We came with a purpose.
"Then let's begin."
Nereus gestured toward the sea-facing chairs with a fluid sweep of his hand.
"Please sit. You've come a long way, and I'd rather not interrogate guests on their feet. That's more of a Paladin habit."
Sahar didn't hesitate. She sank into the seat nearest the open archway, the night breeze lifting strands of her dark hair. Kale remained standing. Nereus's eyes flicked toward him.
"As you wish."
He turned his attention back to Sahar, folding his hands together atop a lacquered table carved with siren script.
"I've taken the liberty of reviewing your records. Quite the fascinating read. Did you know you're the only living citizen recorded to possess full spectrum aptitude during offering?"
Sahar arched a brow.
I did.
"Of course you did."
Nereus said, a small smile playing at the corner of his mouth.
"The temples must have clawed at each other for a chance to claim you. But the Dragon Temple won."
I chose them. They didn't win anything.
Kale's arms crossed behind her. A flicker of approval passed over his face, just for a moment. Nereus chuckled.
"Spoken like a true Sphinx, or a siren, depending on how we measure pride."
He leaned back into the cushions of his chair, his sea-glass eyes studying her with renewed interest.
"You know, it's not too late to transfer. The Siren Temple always welcomes late bloomers, especially ones with your potential."
Sahar laughed.
Tempting, but no, thank you.
"Ah, rejection."
Nereus sighed, placing a hand to his heart in mock pain.
"Paladins breed steel. Witches breed power. But the dragons..."
He glanced at Kale.
"They breed loyalty. Dangerous loyalty."
Kale's gaze was iron.
Say what you mean, High Voice.
"I always do."
Nereus inclined his head, a note of respect in the gesture.
"Your presence here speaks volumes, Kale. I admit, I hadn't expected a former dragon-bonded general to play escort."
She goes nowhere alone.
Kale said flatly. Sahar glanced up at him, amused.
He's decided this recently.
She stepped into something,
Kale muttered.
and I don't like how many eyes are already watching.
Narius's interest sharpened like a blade behind his smile.
Stepped into what, I wonder?
Sahar's gaze locked with his.
You tell me.
Narius tilted his head. For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of waves brushing the cliffs far below. Then he spoke, quieter, laced with curiosity.
There are murmurs in the deep, old names surfacing in siren song. One of our priestesses awakened last moon. Her magic was untempered, raw, powerful. It echoed with something ancient. I thought perhaps
He paused, eyes narrowing ever so slightly.
you might be tied to it.
Sahar frowned.
Your new priestess is a woman?
Yes,
She leaned back slowly, gaze distant. That's strange.
why?
Because, she said carefully.
The one I saw in my dream was a man.
Kale shifted beside her. Narius blinked, expression unreadable. Then, with practiced grace, he stood and stepped toward the window, watching the sea glitter with glowing forms.
Interesting.
He murmured.
And how much of this vision have you told your temple?
Sahar didn't answer. Narius smiled faintly.
Good. You're learning.
Narius folded his hands atop the silk-bound tome before him, its pages still marked where he'd been rereading the oldest iterations of the prophecy. The soft hush of waves echoed through the arched windows behind him, glowing blue where the sirens swam in slow, hypnotic spirals below. He turned his gaze to Sahar.
You're curious about the voice I heard.
She tilted her head, a single brow raised. Kale remained silent, arms crossed, gaze locked on the distant sea.
I understand your skepticism.
Narius said with a soft smile.
It wasn't your voice. Not exactly, but it was powerful, raw, and unmistakably tied to the Siren Temple.
He exhaled thoughtfully.
The song reached me last moon. It resonated from the deep, a true awakening. I believed a new priestess had survived the rite and was channeling the queen herself.
But you were wrong? Sahar asked. Narius hesitated, then nodded slowly.
Possibly. We haven't had a successful initiation in some time. None that could produce a voice like that. And I have no name to pair with the power I felt. Only the echo.
She glanced at Kale, then back.
Maybe it wasn't a priestess.
He blinked, studying her more intently.
A man? An adept?
He tapped his fingers against the cover of the tome.
Unheard of. Not impossible. Our rites don't discriminate. We name by progress, not by gender. Still, rare. But you believe this voice belonged to a male.
Sahar said nothing, watching his reaction carefully. Narius narrowed his eyes slightly, gears turning behind his calm facade.
Then perhaps I was mistaken. Or perhaps he is even more unusual than we realized.
He rose slowly, moving toward the window where the sea pulsed with flickering blue life.
During initiation, all Siren Temple initiates surrender their voices to the sea. They're stored in shells and cast into the Siren's grotto. Then the initiate must enter the water and willingly offer themselves to the Sirens. A Siren drags them deep beneath the waves. To survive, they must prove themselves before the Queen, showing their magic in ways beyond voice, often opening their minds. If they live, their voices return stronger, infused with the Siren's power.
Narius paused, eyes reflective.
It is almost unheard of to use the Queen's song directly. Those who survive the rite emerge changed, gifted not only with amplified voice magic, but also an otherworldly beauty. as if the sea itself has touched their very being.
He looked back toward Sahar.
That voice I heard, I assumed it was a priestess, but your suggestion that it might belong to a male adept complicates things.
Sahar considered this, the weight of it settling in.
A lot about me's complicated. You've read my records.
Nereus chuckled softly.
Thoroughly. I admit, I'm still surprised you didn't choose the Siren Temple.
Sahar grinned.
There's still time.
He inclined his head, half teasing.
Your aptitude was unparalleled. Every temple, that alone would make you unique, but combined with what's awakening inside you, you may be something else entirely.
Kale stepped forward, voice low and firm.
She's not yours.
I made no claim,
Nereus replied smoothly.
though the Siren Temple would welcome her brilliance.
Not interested.
Kale snapped.
We came for answers.
You came for prophecy,
Nereus corrected.
and what I heard may be part of it. A voice returned before its time, a call from the deep linked to the old song.
He faced them fully now.
The prophecy is not linear. It does not name names. It speaks of echoes, convergence, 5 who will stand where others fell, and 1 who carries all.
Sahar crossed her arms.
Let me guess. The last one's me.
Nereus smiled faintly.
I suspect so, but even I do not know the full truth. The sea keeps her secrets, and the Queen, she speaks only to those she marks.
Outside the windows, a soft pulse of light flared deep beneath the waves, as if something ancient stirred in agreement.
The elder's voice was low, gravelly, and steady as he paced before us. His eyes, sharp and cold like the sea in winter, never left the group of trembling initiates.
This is the moment,
He said,
the vow of silence, the path you all must walk to claim the power of the sirens. Your voices will be taken, ripped from your throats and sealed into shells, each shell cast into the sirens' grotto, where the ocean claims them.
A shudder ran through us. Some clutched their throats as if to hold on to something already lost.
You will walk into the water one by one. You must enter willingly, no resistance. The sirens will choose whom they will and drag you beneath the waves. It is not gentle, it is reckoning. To fight is to drown.
He paused, eyes darkening.
Once the sirens take you under, you will face the Queen. She does not speak as we do. You must open your mind to her. Show her your magic, your strength, your spirit. Show the Queen your true power. Do not let your fear betray you. Many rely on their voices for power, but here, words fail. You must reveal what lies within.
The elder began the ritual, one by one, taking each's voice. His hands, cold as stone, sealed them in shells with a final, echoing snap. The shells fell into the dark ocean with haunting plinks. When my turn came, the cold weight of silence pressed down like a shroud. I stepped forward, breath catching, as the elder's fingers brushed my throat, stealing my voice. My magic tied to sound suddenly severed. I felt exposed. I slipped into the water, cold and dark, and waited for the wild, unpredictable sirens. Then, as if the sea itself exhaled, I was seized, strong hands pulling me steeper, faster, down, down, until the surface was distant memory, and silence wrapped around me like the abyss itself. I found that I could breathe, thanks to the water magic cast on us before being brought here. But breathing was the least of my problems. At the bottom, where the last traces of light twisted into shadows that seemed to writhe and pulse like living things, I saw her, the girl before me. Her eyes were wide, almost too wide, frozen in a raw, unfiltered terror that clawed at my chest like a cold hand. She was exposed, mind laid bare, trembling and bleeding thoughts offered up to the Queen's merciless gaze. She opened herself fully, as the Elder had advised, her magic spilling into the darkness like a fragile flame against a storm. But the Queen did not welcome her. She saw her fear. A sudden violent churn shook the water, as if the sea itself roared in fury. The currents around her turned jagged, biting through the silence with cruel precision. Then the sirens came, wild, feral shapes, their hands like knives, slicing through flesh and bone with brutal ease. I could see the girl's body contort and snap, limbs twisted and torn between the crushing weight of the sea and the merciless grasp of the sirens. Her scream was wordless, a desperate, silent terror, etched into the quiver of her eyes, the frantic beat of her heart against the dark. No mercy, no reprieve, only the ancient, unyielding will of the Queen. All that was left of the girl was a cloud of red on a current. I felt the cold claw of panic grip me, freezing my limbs even as my mind screamed to flee. The raw, suffocating silence swallowed every instinct to cry out, to fight, to swim. But I had been taught control, how to bury the terror deep, how to harness the trembling, turn it to calculating steel. My breath slowed, evened out. I forced my gaze away from the remains of the girl, sealing the horror behind an iron wall. There was no room for fear here. Not if I hoped to survive what came next. I forced myself to swallow the bile rising in my throat and drew in a slow, measured breath. The water around me was cold enough to freeze bone, yet my skin prickled with heat, nerves igniting beneath the chill. The silence pressed in, thick and suffocating, broken only by the distant, haunting songs of the sirens above. The Elder's words echoed in my mind. Open your mind. Show the Queen your true power. Do not let your fear betray you. But I wouldn't give her that much. I clenched my fist beneath the waves, steeling myself. Instead of opening my mind, I chose another way. I thought of Umbrell, my sister. I began to move my hands, slow and deliberate, shaping silent signs, sign language. The only way I had learned to speak without a voice, from my sister, who was mute. What if I could channel my voice into every gesture, a thread of magic, weaving light and water into delicate, shimmering spells? And then it happened. Power surged through me like a wild tide, crashing from my fingertips and twisting into intricate spirals of water that danced and sparkled like living jewels. The currents responded to my hands, bending and curling, crafting breathtaking shapes of beauty and power. The Queen's cold eyes widened. Around me, the sirens paused, their wild eyes widening in wonder and delight. Their haunting songs softened, blending with the fluid spells I conjured. I was shocked, stunned beyond belief. I did it. Against all expectations, without opening my mind, I had touched the Queen's favor through this silent language. The water shimmered with my magic, and I knew Something ancient and fierce was watching, approving. The water around me suddenly shifted, the currents growing heavier, colder, charged with an ancient presence. I could feel her before she approached, the Siren Queen. She was vast, her form shimmering like liquid moonlight, impossible to fully behold. Her eyes gleamed with a piercing intelligence, wild and untamed, yet calculating, as if weighing every flicker of magic I cast. I held her gaze, heart pounding, but my mind sharpened like a blade. She was no mindless monster. The Queen was a sovereign force, primal, yes, but cunning. Every movement she made was deliberate, a test, a challenge just like me. Then she reached out. Before I could react, she pressed a palm flat against my neck, searing a mark that pulsed beneath my skin like a living thing. I could feel the power flowing from her touch, ancient, raw, a binding unlike any I had known. I gasped, not from pain, but from a surge of overwhelming energy flooding through me, filling every nerve and sinew. And then, involuntarily, a sound escaped me. A song not my own, yet resonating through my very soul. It was the Siren Queen's voice, wild and haunting, beautiful and terrible all at once. The melody swept through the water around me, twisting and curling like living waves, powerful enough to make even the oldest sirens pause in awe. I sang with her song, feeling it course through my veins, filling my hands with shimmering water magic that danced and sparkled, delighting the sirens circling above. The Queen's eyes locked onto mine, sharp and assessing, as if weighing what I was truly capable of. Then she released me. I surfaced, gasping for air, my hands still humming with the potent magic of the Queen's song. I had survived the Queen's judgment. More than that, I had been marked by it. My throat felt raw, but my voice had returned, clearer and stronger than before, carrying a strange, haunting beauty. I glanced down, catching my reflection in the dark, trembling of water. For a moment, I barely recognized the face staring back. My skin was smoother, almost luminous, the lines sharper. My eyes gleamed with an unfamiliar light, and the curve of my jaw seemed more defined, more perfect. I ran a hand to my throat, then froze, etched into my skin. Glowing faintly in the moonlight was the Queen's brand, the imprint of her hand. No one else bore that mark. I looked around at the others who had survived, the 7 of us left from 20. Each one moved with an unearthly grace as we exited the water. Their features changed beyond mere beauty, touched by something ancient and wild. Their eyes held secrets deeper than the ocean, their presence both mesmerizing and unsettling. We were more than human now, exquisite, untouchable, and undeniably marked by the siren's power. Whispers rose among the initiates as they noticed the brand on my throat. Some stared in awe, others with suspicion. The elders' eyes lingered on me longer than on anyone else, weighing the meaning behind that glowing mark. All eyes dropped to my throat, the brand glowing faintly, an undeniable mark of the Queen's judgment. A ripple of murmurs spread.
Look at that mark, that's not given to just anyone.
Did he somehow survive in a way no one else has?
Doubt and suspicion crept in. The brand was sacred, the gift rare. And this transformation marked a crossing into something beyond the ordinary. The elder's voice cut through the whispers, low and heavy with meaning.
The Queen's mark is a heavy burden. Your journey doesn't end here.
I swallowed hard, feeling their eyes weigh me, questioning if I was truly worthy. I was changed, but whether I was chosen or cursed was still to be seen.
And so the scroll closes. But your fire hasn't dimmed, has it, Seeker? I saw how you listened, how your breath caught in the storm, how your heart followed the riders. You're not ready to let go. Don't worry. I've already placed the order. The next dream is on its way. Inked in flame, bound in scale, whispered from the mouth of an ancient beast. Rest while you can. The library will call you again soon.